Welcome to the Autism Infocast. I'm Peter Clark, founder and chairman of the Autism Info Center. Our podcasts delve into every part of autism and neurodiversity, and we want to help you spread understanding, respect, and kindness for those whose lives are affected. Whether you're autistic yourself, or whether you know or care for someone who's autistic, or maybe you just come into contact with autistic people in everyday life. Either way, please feel free to check out our hundreds of articles, videos, books, and training courses at autisminfocenter.org. And I'll leave you now in the capable hands of today's hosts, Jemima and Theo. Over to you.
Today we're really getting into a topic that, well, it touches all our lives. Communication. And specifically, how we can foster, deeper understanding and just more effective interactions when we're communicating with autistic adults. Our goal, to give you some practical, respectful adjustments, things that can really bridge those communication gaps and maybe unlock some genuine aha moments for you.
Yeah, it's such a vital conversation to have because communication, fundamentally, it's a partnership, isn't it? It's a two-way street.
Absolutely.
And we've looked at a lot of insightful guidings on this. What we're aiming for today isn't just theory. It's about actionable strategies. It's recognizing that, sometimes small shifts in how we approach things can make a huge difference in connection.
I think that's something many of us can relate to, those times where communication just sort of misses the mark. But when we talk specifically about interacting with autistic adults, why is it that some communication styles might need, adjusting? What's really going on there in terms of how information is processed differently?
Yeah, that's really the starting point for understanding, isn't it? A really significant difference lies in what's often called literal interpretation.
Okay.
So while neurotypical brains often automatically pick up on nuance, context, or implied social meaning, autistic individuals very often process words at their exact literal meaning. It's important to stress this isn't a deficit.
Right.
It's simply a different way of processing language. So take a common phrase like, let's think outside the box. For many, that's instantly understood as be creative. But for a literal thinker, the immediate focus might actually be on a physical box. If there isn't one, it can lead to genuine confusion or just perplexity. It really highlights how much subtext we rely on, maybe without even realizing it.
Wow, yeah. That paints a clear picture. It's almost like we're using a kind of shorthand or code that not everyone automatically deciphers. What else plays into these communication differences?
Well, another crucial aspect is processing time. It can often take longer for an autistic person to fully process verbal information, especially if the environment is busy or distracting, or, if lots of ideas are being thrown out at once. Their brain might be meticulously working through each piece of information, maybe filtering out background noise before they can even formulate a response.
So that pause.
Exactly. That pause after you ask a question. It's very rarely disinterest or a lack of understanding. Much more often, it's dedicated thinking time. It's internal processing happening, and it's really valuable.
That's a powerful reminder. It definitely challenges that impulse many of us have to immediately fill any silence, doesn't it?
It does.
And speaking of things that aren't explicitly said, nonverbal communication. That's a whole different ballgame. How do nonverbal cues fit into this?
Oh, they're hugely important and complex. Many autistic people don't intuitively use or interpret typical body language, facial expressions, or tone of voice in the same way neurotypical people might, which can make it genuinely challenging for them to grasp all the sort of emotional or contextual layers of a conversation. And on the flip side, their own nonverbal cues can be easily misinterpreted by others.
How so?
Well, for instance, things like fidgeting, maybe looking away, or having a less animated facial expression. These aren't necessarily signs of rudeness or that they're not engaged. They could actually be coping mechanisms.
Wow, okay.
Ways to manage sensory overload, perhaps, or even a way to concentrate better by reducing the cognitive effort needed for things like maintaining eye contact. It really shows how much we need to question our own assumptions sometimes.
Okay, so understanding these core differences, literal interpretation, processing time, nonverbal cues, that gives us the why. Now, let's get practical. What are the actionable steps? When we're actually talking with someone, what can we do to communicate more clearly?
Right, this is moving from the why to the how. And probably the single most impactful adjustment you can make is simply this. Be clear, direct, and concrete.
Okay. Clear, direct, concrete.
Exactly. Ambiguity, hints, vague language. They just create extra cognitive load and open the door wide for misunderstandings. Think about a work situation. Instead of saying something vague like, "Can you sort that report sometime soon?"
Which could mean anything.
Precisely. It's wide open. A much, much clearer request would be something like, "Please, could you start working on the marketing report we discussed this morning? The first step is gathering the sales data. I really need it by 3 p.m. tomorrow. See the difference?"
Oh, absolutely. The clarity there is night and day. One feels like a suggestion you might forget. The other is a clear task with steps and a deadline. I can see how that reduces potential anxiety.
Enormously. And it prevents missed expectations, too.
Does this apply just as much in, say, more casual, everyday settings, like at home?
Absolutely. Think about saying, "This room is a mess." That's a judgment, right? It forces the listener to guess what action you actually want them to take. Instead, be specific. "Please, could you put the books back on the shelf, put the cushions back on the sofa, and then vacuum the floor?" That directness, it's actually a kindness.
That makes sense. Less guesswork, less stress.
And along those lines, try to avoid unexplained figurative language. You know, those common idioms like, "Let's play it by ear."
Right, which we use all the time without thinking.
We do. And they can cause genuine confusion or anxiety because of that literal interpretation we talked about. If you do use an idiom, maybe just quickly explain it. Like, "Let's play it by ear," meaning, we'll decide what to do as we go along, depending on how things are.
Such a simple fix, but potentially really helpful. It makes me think about all those unspoken social rules we navigate daily. They must be tricky, too. How can we make those social expectations clearer?
You've hit on a really critical point there. So many social rules are unspoken, and for autistic individuals, navigating that can feel like walking through a minefield.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So being explicit about social expectations isn't patronizing. It's actually a fundamental act of respect and inclusion. For example, before a meeting, you could say something like, "Just so you know, we'll probably have about half an hour of general chat and catching up first. The main agenda items won't likely start until around 10:30 a.m.
Giving a roadmap.
Exactly. It provides foresight, a clear structure for the social part, reduces uncertainty, and allows the person to prepare mentally.
That seems incredibly thoughtful, just taking the guesswork out of social situations. And looping back to what you said earlier about processing time.
Yeah.
How do we actively build that understanding into our conversations?
It really comes down to consciously allowing that processing time. Embracing the pause, you could say.
Okay.
So when you ask a question, you really have to resist that knee-jerk reaction to fill the silence if it stretches a bit, or to immediately rephrase the question.
Which is hard sometimes.
It can be, because we're often conditioned to keep conversation flowing. But that pause, remember, it's vital thinking time. By waiting patiently, you're showing respect for their way of processing, and honestly, you significantly increase the chance of getting a well-thought-out, accurate response. It's about letting the silence do its work.
Letting the silence work. I like that. That idea of giving space naturally leads into active listening, doesn't it? That feels like a cornerstone for building real understanding.
It absolutely is foundational. Active listening isn't just about hearing the words. It's about being fully engaged, really processing, and then confirming what's being communicated. It demonstrates profound respect.
So how do we do it effectively? What are the steps?
Well, the first step is pretty straightforward, but crucial. Give your full attention.
Right, put the phone down.
Exactly. Put distractions away, turn towards the person, make it clear they have your undivided focus. It sends a powerful message. What you're saying matters to me.
Okay, full attention. Got it. What's next? How do we show we're actually taking it in?
The second step is to show you're listening. This can be done with small, non-intrusive verbal cues. Things like nodding or saying, okay, I see, or yes. Just enough to show you're tracking with them, but without interrupting their train of thought.
Subtle acknowledgments.
Precisely. And then the third step, which is arguably the most crucial for ensuring understanding, is to reflect and clarify what's been said.
Meaning, paraphrasing back.
Exactly. Paraphrasing what you think you heard back to them. This does two vital things. It confirms your understanding, and importantly, it gives them an immediate chance to correct you if you've misunderstood anything.
Can you give an example of how that might sound?
Sure. Let's say someone tells you, "I can't go to the party on Saturday. The music will probably be too loud, and I don't know many people there." A good clarifying response might be, "Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, it sounds like the loud music and lots of unfamiliar people would make it overwhelming for you. It's not that you don't want to come, but those factors make it too difficult. Is that about right?"
I see. You're checking the specifics and the underlying feeling.
Yes. And you could even follow up by exploring solutions based on that understanding. Like, I wonder if there might be a quieter space at the party where you could take breaks if needed. It moves the conversation from just hearing their words to genuinely understanding and responding to their actual concern.
That really does transform the interaction, doesn't it? It's not just an exchange of information. It's building a connection based on real clarity.
That's the goal.
Now, speaking of clarity, you mentioned earlier that sometimes written communication, emails, texts, can actually be less stressful. It removes that immediate pressure of nonverbal cues and processing on the spot. Is that often the case?
Yes, you're absolutely right. For many autistic individuals, written communication can significantly reduce pressure. It allows time to process information and formulate a response without the immediate social demands or the need to decode nonverbals simultaneously.
So, if we're writing an email or a message, are there ways to make that even more accessible?
Definitely. There are some simple, practical tips. First, always use a clear and specific subject line. Makes it easy to see the topic at a glance.
Good point.
Second, don't bury the important stuff. State the main point or any required action right at the beginning of the message.
Get straight to it.
Yes. And to help organize the information visually, use bullet points or numbered lists whenever possible. Makes it much easier to scan and digest. And finally, try to keep your sentences and paragraphs relatively short and focused. Avoid long, rambling text walls. Clear structure helps a lot.
So, clear subject, main point up front, lists, short sentences. Basically making it easy to read and understand quickly.
Exactly. It leverages visual processing strengths and makes the information much less overwhelming.
Okay, that's really helpful for written communication. Now let's tackle that complex area we touched on earlier, nonverbal communication. It sounds like it's a two-way street, understanding an autistic person's cues and also being mindful of our own.
It absolutely is, and it's definitely a nuanced area. In typical interactions, we're constantly, often unconsciously, sending and receiving streams of nonverbal information, tone, expression, body language.
Right.
For many autistic people, both interpreting these signals from others and using them in a way that neurotypical people expect can be really challenging. So as neurotypical communicators, learning to understand these differences and maybe consciously adjusting our own nonverbal signals can be incredibly supportive. It can really foster much stronger connections.
Okay, let's break that down. Starting with understanding their cues. What should we be mindful of? What are some common misinterpretations we should try to avoid?
Well, a big one is eye contact. It's so ingrained in many cultures as a sign of honesty or attention. But it's crucial to remember that for many autistic people, direct, sustained eye contact can feel intensely uncomfortable. It might be distracting, overwhelming, even physically painful sometimes.
So it's not about dishonesty or not paying attention.
Almost never. In fact, they might be listening more intently precisely because they aren't spending precious mental energy forcing eye contact they find difficult. The key takeaway here is simply to accept whatever level of eye contact they offer naturally. Don't comment on it, don't push for more, just let it be.
That's a really important shift in perspective for many of us, I think. What about facial expressions and tone of voice? We tend to read so much into those.
Yes, and this is another area where misinterpretation is common. An autistic person's facial expression or their tone of voice might not always match the emotion they're feeling inside. They might have a neutral or what some might call a flat expression, even when they're feeling very happy or excited or perhaps anxious.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, their tone might sound quite monotonous to a neurotypical ear, regardless of the topic's emotional weight. You could sort of think of it like their internal emotional volume is turned way up, but the external speaker is set to low.
Okay, that's a helpful analogy.
So the practical advice here is to prioritize and trust their actual words over your interpretation of their nonverbal cues. If they say they're happy about something, believe their words, even if their expression doesn't look conventionally happy to you.
That really circles back to the importance of clear, direct verbal communication, doesn't it? Relying on the words.
It does.
And what about body language? Things like folded arms or maybe turning slightly away, that can sometimes read as closed off or uninterested in typical interactions.
Right, and that's another potential misinterpretation. For an autistic person, that kind of posture, folded arms, angled body, might actually be about creating a sense of physical security or managing sensory input from the environment. It's not necessarily about being unfriendly or disengaged.
So it can be a self-regulation thing.
Exactly. Or just managing personal space. Their need for personal space might also be different from yours, maybe needing more, maybe less. The key insight is just to respect their posture and the physical space they seem comfortable with. Try not to interpret it solely through that neurotypical lens of social signaling.
Okay, that gives us a much better framework for understanding their nonverbal signals.
Now, flipping it around, what about our own nonverbal communication? How can we adjust what we're doing to be clearer and maybe less overwhelming without becoming robotic?
That's the balance, isn't it? We definitely don't want to be unnatural, but we can make our nonverbals more supportive.
Right.
For instance, try to make your gestures clear and purposeful. Simple gestures that directly reinforce what you're saying, like literally pointing when giving directions, can be very helpful.
As opposed to maybe big, vague, or overly animated gestures.
Right, those might just add extra visual noise or cognitive load without adding clarity. Also, really try to match your facial expression and your tone of voice to your words. Congruence is key. Meaning, if you're giving praise, make sure your smile looks genuine and your tone sounds warm. That reinforces the positive message clearly. If you're discussing something serious, a calm, neutral tone is often more effective than one that's heavily loaded with complex emotional signals that they then have to decode. Consistency reduces confusion. Makes sense. Consistency between words and signals. Now, personal space and touch seem like particularly sensitive areas. What's the main thing to keep in mind there?
They are very important. Firstly, be highly conscious of proximity. Avoid standing too close, as that can feel quite intimidating or intrusive for many autistic people. Give them adequate space. And secondly, this is crucial. Never, ever touch an autistic person unexpectedly.
Even with good intentions, like a friendly pat on the shoulder.
Even then, what might feel like a casual, friendly gesture to you can be sensorially jarring, incredibly overwhelming, or even distressing for someone with different sensory processing. It can feel like an invasion. If you genuinely feel a touch is appropriate for the situation, maybe a handshake is expected, always ask first. Is it okay if I shake your hand? Consent is absolutely paramount.
Always ask first. That's such a vital point, and probably one that's easily overlooked in the moment.
It really is.
Are there any other nonverbal strategies that can be particularly helpful?
Yes, there's one more that's really powerful because it often taps into autistic processing strengths. Use visuals to support your words whenever possible.
Like drawing things out.
Exactly, or writing things down. Many autistic people are strong visual thinkers. So in a meeting, you might say, that's a great idea. Let me just jot that down as a key action point so we don't forget, and then actually write it where they can see it on a whiteboard, a notepad. Or if you're trying to explain something complex, maybe a process or how something works, sketching out a quick diagram or a flow chart can often provide much more immediate clarity than relying only on spoken words. It makes the abstract concrete.
So pulling all this together, it sounds like these adjustments, being clear, allowing time, active listening, being mindful of nonverbals, using visuals, they aren't about dumbing down how we communicate at all.
Not at all.
It's more about making our communication more precise, more intentional, and really fundamentally more respectful of neurological diversity, wouldn't you say?
That's exactly it. That's the perfect way to put it. It's really an act of practical respect for how different brains process the world and process information. By consciously cultivating patience, by choosing directness and explicitness, by truly engaging in active listening, and by being mindful non-verbally, you can significantly reduce misunderstandings. You can help prevent unnecessary anxiety. And ultimately, you can build much stronger, more effective, and just more genuine connections with the autistic adults in your work, your family, and your community.
This has been incredibly insightful, thank you. It really drives home the power of intentional communication and how sometimes just a little bit more thought and effort can go such a long way in building those essential bridges of understanding. As you, our listener, reflect on these principles, maybe consider how they might enrich not just your interactions with autistic adults, but perhaps all your communication, fostering better understanding with everyone.
And maybe a final thought to ponder. If this kind of clear, direct, and respectful communication can be so profoundly beneficial when interacting with autistic adults, what might that teach us about the subtle and maybe not so subtle ways we could improve understanding and connection in all our relationships? How can we better embrace everyone's unique way of processing the world around them?
Thanks for listening to this Autism Infocast from the AutismInfoCenter.org.
Thank you, Jemima and Theo. I'm sure we've all learned something there today. Don't forget to visit AutismInfoCenter.org to hear our other episodes, browse our library of articles, see our inspiring range of books, watch our videos about autism and neurodiversity, and find out about training courses that can help you or your organization make the world a safer, happier, and more meaningful place for us all. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please feel free to spread the word about Autism Info Centre. A quick mention on your socials is always appreciated. Until next time, this is Peter Clark from autisminfocentre.org. Have a great day.